Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gents. Welcome back to High Top Sports Georgia. Coming off the big W against Texas. Texas is in shambles. Vandy is ready to bite while it's hot. Jack Mack, our dogged insider. How you feeling? Again, of course, the show is brought to you by BetUS. But Jack, how you feeling about that big W on Texas, man?
Feeling great. I mean, as all of us Georgia fans are, I mean, seeing that defense come back in that spot, all eyes on the game. I mean, it was great to see. Nothing like seeing our great defensive ends and D line, really everybody. Our corner got in there for a massive hit. I mean, it was just great to see the big hitting, Georgia defense again.
For
So
sure.
yeah,
Headed into a bye week with the W is always nice. Dwelling on a loss for a bye week is not fun. Florida as well as headed into a bye week, and a lot of us Florida fans, we were hoping we would I kind of would want Georgia this week. I think we were on some momentum, as are you, but there was a little bit of struggles on offense, which we'll get into. But let's talk about the trench work, which that's what concerns me headed into this game next week against Florida.
absolutely. I mean, that was kind of the main talk heading into this game. Is probably the biggest bulletin board material Kirby had is most of the media experts had Texas, winning in the trenches. Their offensive line looked better. I heard so much about those tackles, left tackle and right tackle, going to be high draft picks. And our Georgia defense hadn't improved much, really, against top offenses, obviously with that Alabama game mainly. But they showed up in a big way. And just being able to show everybody that, I mean, we still got the guys, even if someone gets hurt, we have Jalen Walker. Now he's the star, but, he was just replacing Michael Williams earlier this year. So that's just the theme for Georgia's next man up. And just seeing a bunch of new faces, a bunch of faces in general impact the game defensively was great to see. But yeah, with the trenches on the offensive line, many Georgia fans were critical, right? We weren't able to get things going. We got ETN, thought, he was going to immediately make an impact. And he has obviously the biggest impact in that big game with Texas, but
Sure.
it's been a little slow rolling in the early parts of the season. So again, against a great now SEC defense with Texas, um, our our offensive line was able to move those guys around a little bit. I mean, we didn't get gaping holes throughout the game, but on the road we were able to establish enough of a running game to you know keep our defense rolling
Yeah,
and not give them any momentum.
your
So yeah, it
defense
was great to see, and they're back.
your defense is legitimate to say the least. Trevor, look, I said this too, has been awfully quiet. Again, when you pick up somebody like Trevor, you really think he's going to come in and make an explosion, just given what he did at Florida with little time that he had at Florida. But look, as Florida fans, we kind of knew there was a little bit of holes in his game, not too many. I would say more of just the pass blocking was what he would always get dogged on from being a Gator. But the kid can run, and he showed that on Saturday against Texas. Had 3 touchdowns, I believe, is what I saw last.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
good,
he
great.
had, I think, well, he really had three. Remember, he got on that last touchdown drive, he had to score twice because they had a replay and
Uh,
he looked like he was in, but made him. I think he only had two, but
maybe it was a
he
catch.
might
I
have.
thought he had 3 because I was talking smack because Jaden Ball had 5. So I was looking before I said anything to make sure that he had more. But all in all, good game
No,
from
he had a
Trevor.
great game.
Yeah, good. No, great game for him. Again, given the fact he's been quiet and given I think the circumstances of what was expected from Georgia, and we talked earlier in the season, just about this running back room, thinking that it was going to be something really big and back to the old ways of Georgia when it hasn't really fruitioned into that just yet. But let's get into just still a lack of offense. Carson Beck, look, let's look at this list here from BetUS because again the show is brought to you by BetUS. These are the top 5 quarterbacks thus far through week 9. Going into it, I created a list of top 10 quarterbacks in the SEC. I had Carson Beck, I think number 2 or 1 with Quinn Ewers. Seeing none of these guys up here in the top 5 this far along, a little surprising to you?
Absolutely. Very surprising. I mean, I thought he would be a shoo-in at least to make it to New York.
Sure.
But a lot of things have been surprising with this Georgia offense. I mean, they've shown in spots that they can be great. Obviously, second half against Bama, second half against Clemson. But again, the inconsistencies are just the roller coaster with Carson Beck and this offense is, night and day, literally. So very surprising not to see him on this list. Um, I like Garrett Nussmeier. I didn't think he would already be this high up, but obviously been a lot more guys that have played better and deserving to be on this list than Carson so far. So, yeah, it's been a shot, but hopefully the best football is still ahead of them. It has to be if Georgia wants a chance to win the national championship. That's
We
for
were
sure.
talking just 2 weeks ago. I think I said, look, the quarterback room has been sus from Georgia. It feels like it's back to those Fromm and JT Daniel days before Stetson Bennett has come in. And can you raise the flag of quarterback development of like what's going on? Brock hasn't looked fantastic at Kentucky. I'm not going to fully blame that on Georgia, new system, new team, but sitting for this quite some time, you think he looked a little more comfortable by this far into the season at Kentucky. He still looks like a true freshman quarterback, and in a way, he is his first 9 starts. But Carson has looked. Look, this is my saving grace. That's gonna be my big talking point next week on our show for Florida. Is Carson Beck is going to be our biggest point, our best
Yeah.
player.
Yeah. Which Carson are you going to get? I mean,
Sure.
or a little bit of both. But yeah, I think, again, I was very harsh with him about his play on Sunday's show. But after watching the game again, I mean, he did not get a lot of help. I mean, Dylan Bell, first 2 plays of the game, they were not perfect throws between the numbers, but he dropped catchable balls, hit them in both of the hands. I mean, we have to have guys that can bring that in if it's not just, you know, uh, an easy throw with nobody around him. We got to have some guys to make some contested catches to help Carson Beck out. So I'm not making excuses for Carson. He's turned the ball over unnecessarily and put the ball in harm's way too much. But you got to think the beginning of that game, having your best receiver, I would argue, drop the ball the first 2 plays. I mean, that's got to hurt with your psyche. Like, what do
For
I have
sure.
to do, type of thing. And again, you got to overcome that and be able to just next play mindset. But yeah, I think that's just as big of a story for Georgia is a need for somebody to break out at wide receiver. Arian Smith, I hear him. I've heard him since I was still in school at Georgia. His name, watch out for Arian Smith. He's going to be the X factor, and it's always been like this. Couple good moments, just like this offense. Couple good moments, but a lot of dry spells. So um, Carson Beck, it's to your point about the development of Georgia. You're right. I mean, it's very odd. Everything but that has been, really consistent for the past 5, 6 years. I mean, outside of Stetson Bennett, a walk-on quarterback, that would be a much bigger criticism. Um, with Georgia's quarterback play, and that's not even really to Georgia's credit. Like, they didn't really recruit him; he was a walk on. So you're right. I mean,
7 years
I
in
haven't
too.
really thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
And again, especially with, I mean, Dylan Rolo, I think he left for certain reasons, and I think he made the right decision. And I said, look, when he was getting recruited, I said, you go to Nebraska and be the guy and get a statue built at you out there in Nebraska. And I think he made the right move in that. And look, you guys, I think, had a quarterback decommit this past week, and I don't think it has much to do with this, but you got to start raising the question. Look, defensively, you guys will never have issues recruiting dogs, pun intended, but offensively, there's gonna be some struggle. Before we get into that, because I do want to talk about, you mentioned the offensive identity, and I talked about with Jake Crane as well, which was great that you mentioned it as well. If you check out betus.com, use the code YouTube150. On the first deposit, you get back 150%. On the second and third deposit, you get back 125, up to $2,000. Go check out maybe the Heisman odds. Those have changed drastically since the last few weeks. It's not as intense as it once was. Obviously, Carson Beck does not seem to be on that list anymore. It looks like it's asking Genties to lose at this point. But see if there's anybody, maybe like a Dark Knight, that Travis Hunter, that could make a late pool that you guys are interested in. But let's talk about, again, the lack of identity. Even Jake Crane said it, is there isn't a Lab McConkey or a Brock Bowers that you can rely on to just dump it off. Brock was the pacifier for Carson Beck. I think all big tight ends are pacifiers for quarterbacks. And sometimes you can have, a Lad was a good pacifier. That little slot guy, you can just dump it off to and let him do work. Nobody has risen to that for you guys.
yeah, I mean, AD Mitchell. Thinking back on it, that wide receiver core was loaded. I mean, it's such night and day
George
difference that
Pickens,
what we have now. George Pickens, he's pretty good. But yeah, right now, I thought Dylan Bell was really going to take a next step. Arian Smith, I just kind of hoped that. I've never been a big believer in him, just because he hasn't shown it consistently. But I just kind of hope, fifth year at Georgia. I mean, he's got to figure it out now. But I mean, Yeah, it's just a struggle when Carson Beck, he does not have a number one guy, and that's kind of my point here. With someone needs to step up and take ownership of that. I mentioned earlier this year when Georgia lost to Bama, we need a offensive leader or a voice in the
A
huddle,
voice.
someone that can calm things down. And maybe ETN is that guy. I'm not sure, but we really need that in the wide receiver room. I mean, someone that says, "I want the ball." George Pickens, like you said, he never had a problem. We almost had to, had some issues drama wise because of how much he wanted the ball sometimes. Uh, but we need that. I mean, every great wide receiver, is arrogant and they want the football, and that's not there right now. That's evident. And tight end Oscar Delp has been missing. I mean, you can't even compare Brock Bowers to Oscar Delp. I mean,
We did it
Lawson
one
Lucky is,
time.
yeah.
We, for a short moment, I think I myself included was this. I was like, just another one, just rinse and repeat here. Look, I think it's funny. The obnoxious wide receiver can be annoying, but you need that alpha in the room. And that look that I point that back on Carson because at least with Stetson, guy is what 5'9", 115 pounds, but my God, he could carry a room with his voice. He was a phenomenal leader. I mean, you got to respect what he was able to do. I think a lot of people looked up to him, not literally, but
Yeah.
mentally they did. And Trevor, I think Trevor, again, I've interviewed Trevor being on part of the Florida team, loving it. I think he's a great kid outside of him leaving Florida. I mean, obviously all things detached from that. He gives me more like Russell Westbrook vibes where let me just ball. I can ball. But I'm not sure if he's gonna, come into a room and hype. I think he can maybe say a speech, but just doesn't give that same aura of like
Yeah.
I'm the leader, like a Bo Jackson or like a Herschel Walker, where it's like let's just go get it. Like that. Nothing, not a shot against him. There's nothing wrong with that. The guy's a baller. Russell Westbrook's a baller, but he needs somebody next to him that can manage the voice. And right now there is nobody.
Absolutely. There is nobody, and nobody has stepped up. I thought I mean, like you're saying, we need somebody that's, not an offensive lineman. The only people that come to my mind right now is Tate Ratledge, a couple offensive line guys, and that is Georgia. So maybe it could be, offensive line guy to take charge. And maybe we really get into running the football again, taking snaps under center, but I don't think that's going to happen this year, Shelton. I've been pleading for it more and more, but no, Georgia Georgia's offensive identity is what it is. I mean, for the rest of the year, I mean, they make some tweaks, but as it stands now, we just need somebody to simply make more plays. Kirby always preaches on winning moments, right? We need the offensive guys, especially at wide receiver, to win more moments, win more contested catches, um, and I think they will. I mean, I think as the season gets going, they will get more confidence. With this big win at Texas, I mean, I don't know how you don't have confidence, even though you didn't play well. I mean, you got past that hurdle. You guys were not the cause of Georgia losing that big of a game. Then you really would be worried. So, hopefully they have kind of that pressure alleviated from them and they could just go ball the rest of the year. But I mean, they got to prove it. With one more thing with Oscar Delp, when I was still working at Georgia, I was front and center, hand up, saying this guy is going to be so good. I mean, a couple of like the, you know, closed off scrimmages, spring scrimmages that we would hold. I say closed off, but they would just let some donors in to watch. He would ball in those, like he was mossing those. Back in the days, 2021, that great defense. I mean, he scored 2 touchdowns as a true freshman. And so I don't know what's happened. It's definitely between the years for sure.
Fall
But
off.
Lawson Lucky stepped up.
I was talking to a buddy the other day about this game coming up against Florida. Years past, this bye week kind of really started the season for both teams because the front half of the schedule, especially for Florida, I mean, Tennessee, Kentucky was always up in front. They did not carry the weight they've carried in the last few years, and then usually there's 3 cupcake games in there. We don't usually stack. It would be like a Vandy and then like 2 cupcakes. We don't usually stack an A&M and a UCF and a Miami up there like we did this year. In Georgia, to the same, right? They may have like one kind of tough one, but nothing too crazy. So this really kind of set the tone for the rest of the season. This being the second bye week for both teams being extremely bad at battle tested. I mean, you could argue you guys have been more battle tested. The teams that we played haven't lost a game, right? And the 2 teams we lost to, or 3 teams, but Tennessee took down Alabama. We played some hella football teams just like you have. You got to think this game is going to be more electric than it's been in a long time, just given what both teams have gone up against leading up to this. They've been shown every card. They've faced every adversity, and now Florida is on their way of their the future with their true freshman DJ Lagway. It's gonna be a fun week next week.
Absolutely, and they both get to take a break this week, get a bye. I mean, not
Huge.
to discount that. Both of them need it after
Yeah.
their schedules. And I wouldn't really argue really for Georgia as having a tougher schedule. They're both, I mean, they're both right there. So, yeah, I hope we do get high scoring. That means our offense is playing better.
Finally.
But I do agree. As a Georgia fan, I'm scared of. I mean, not I won't want to say scared, but I'm worried about DJ Lagway's just him being able to run, make plays outside of the pocket. That's what Georgia. We talked about that last week. They have trouble with that.
You get the Milrow
Really
effect.
only.
You get the
Exactly.
you get the Milrow effect with not much tape. There's an advantage for Florida there. The disadvantage is the youth, and I think what they'll do is what Tennessee did, which Kentucky didn't do much of: bring the blitz, force him to make a quick decision, and it'll make Billy and those guys adapt, which they haven't proven to be able to do that. I'm hoping they can, but you've got to keep Georgia's defense offense. Look, I think if the strength is your defense, you've got to make DJ play into that and see what he's really made of.
I agree. I totally agree. But with Milrow, we tried to blitz him a couple times, and all he did was just run on the outside of us for 50 yards. So
That's true.
I just hope we've adjusted our plan a little bit to contain. Again, it scares me because we have always had trouble. The only exception is Bo Nix. That guy was terrible against Georgia. But to your point, yeah, I expect it to be a different game than we're used to seeing, over the last couple of years,
For sure.
seeing like Felipe Franks. It's going to be different than that for sure.
That is true.
No shade on Felipe Franks, but
Shade accepted. Shade accepted. It should be a fun one. Well, boys and girls, that is our show for today. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe. The SC preview show will be up tomorrow night, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. Turn the bell on if you guys want to be ready to go. And then next week should be a doozy. We're going to have Uncle Lou, big-time Georgia lover, on our main channel for Wednesday, so that should be an absolute blast to preview the Georgia show. Well, Jack Mack, our dog insider, we love you, appreciate you. Be sure to smash the like button, boys and girls. The show is brought to you at BetUS. Peace and love, baby.